All right. Hello. Welcome back to Personality Habits. Today we are going to go over some objective personality theory concepts and go over the objective personality socials and the connection with the animals. Uh, so this is going to use existing knowledge on objective personality as usual on this channel. So on this channel, we like to not just learn the theory, but also practically apply the theories and the lessons that we're learning to actual people in actual life. It's why I do the coaching service and helping people with real problems and people who know their personality, and then trying to actually make a real change in their life based on the understanding of their own nature and their own tendencies. So, um, diving right into it with the objective personality socials, first we need to understand what is the problem with the socials right now. They just came out with this information this year. The OP team, Dave and Shan. Um, the thing is that the social types have been deceptively simple to people in the community and people who are learning about it and just in general. Like, it is simple in a lot of ways, and we've seen this everywhere. But when it comes to the actual application of it, it's not so easy. Someone could tell you your hair is brown or something, but like, what do you do about that? Like, you learn about your social type, and then you realize that it's actually, you know, kind of complicated to like do something about it. And it's interesting because they actually do stack on top of the 512 type. So the reason why it's not exactly like hair color is because this also affects your personality. And we already have in the objective personality system 9 coins. And so when we're moving from 9 to 11, you think it's maybe a linear complexity or it's getting only a little bit more complicated. But in actuality, what I'm finding is that, in talking to people, helping them through their problems, it's actually really, it's affecting everything else in your personality, or everything in your personality is also affecting it. So it kind of has a multiplicative or kind of like a stacking effect on, you know, what is actually going on with, your behaviors, your actions, your tendencies. Um, and there's a lot to dig through. This is why people go to therapy. This is why people, really work hard at journaling, understanding their own processes and their own thinking patterns. Um, and yeah, like why people get stuck. Um, so the simplicity of the social types, it can easily be drawn to like the four temperaments from a long time ago, thousands of years ago. They used to have this four temperaments, which pretty much captures the social types. So the thing is, like the socials, it's pretty visible. You got your number one, two, three, and four, and you can pretty much see that. Like that's maps pretty much to the choleric, sanguine, melancholic, and phlegmatic. Um, but the thing is, like that alone doesn't get you very much. It doesn't get you very far. So, and as I mentioned there, like how do we coach ourselves and others, using social types? Like, how do we deal with the actual complexity that's there because we have the added benefit of having gone through the 9 coins in the objective personality space for multiple years, prior to discovering this, at least in this context, rediscovering the social types. Specifically in this video, I want to focus on the animals. So why am I trying to focus not just on social types, but the animals themselves? Um, so the thing is, like the social type of your personality, there's a certain movement to it. You may notice it, you may see it. This is also theoretical as well. Like, pretty much what we're seeing, in actuality, it is turning out this way, but of course we can be wrong. This is a lot of guesswork, how things are going. But the idea is that, we're trying to understand how the social type moves. For example, if you're flexing, like how does that move in society? Donald Trump, he's a social one. Like, why is that moving the way it does? And can we prevent it? Can we do anything about it? whereas someone who's born as a social one, like, necessarily going to just become an asshole to everyone, you know, or going to be a powerhouse and always going to be the leader of a team. Is that really the case, or is there some movement? Is there some way that a number one can maybe be a supporting character, and be happy about it? Um, so, just to understand this movement, within the social type, we also want to map the objective personality animals to the social nature, because not just because we want to, but it is actually what's happening. Like, it's been easier to describe the experience of having a social type by utilizing the animals as kind of a way to understand how it's flowing, how we're moving. For example, like a social three might have the specialize and the flex, like how they seem like they're using sleep, the animal of sleep, or the social fours look like they're using the animal of consume because they're doing some specialize, and um, yeah, so there's there's a lot that's happening in terms of like the animals, like which, we don't want to misattribute which animal is being used for which social type, and we want to understand, like, why does it feel like they're all kind of mapping to all of them in a way, or one way or another. There seems to be a lot going on there. So, like, how do we differentiate the animals to the socials? um, so we all have flex, responsibility, specialize, and friends. That's a number one, two, three, four, respectively. And we also all have play, sleep, consume, and blast. And like, those are the four animals in objective personality. Um, so yeah, the idea is, like, let's try to map the four animals to the four social needs. And how can you do that? What are the various combinations, permutations, but also, like, what is the actual, like, can we describe this in actual reality? Yeah, so in order to do that, the rest of the slides are a lot fewer words. But yeah, just want to set out the whole problem statement. It includes, basically, like, hey, the social types, you can look at them in a simple way, or you can actually add them to the rest of the system and kind of see how it moves and see how you can do something about your nature, which is, very difficult. And but it's possible. um, and that's pretty much what we're working through every day, through our own awareness and various, like, practices, like journaling and talking and stuff, talking things out. um, Moving forward, so, like, let's start out with, like, what is the ideal animal stack for each social type? And this has been kind of discussed. So part of the purpose of this video is also for me to kind of put my stamp of approval on things, and just to say that, yes, the number one really does seem, you know, like sleep, blast, play, consume. Like, that animal stack seems to be the most like a number one. And I've definitely had different thoughts at different times. Um, but as the data is coming in and as the evidence, the patterns are being more well known, um, I've definitely seen this with myself a lot more. And it's been a lot, honestly, to deal with the idea of having a certain social consume last. So this is what I would say is like your social animal stack. So the number one's social animal stack is sleep, blast, play. So it's the know-it-all type. Um, the number two is play, blast, consume, or consume, play, blast. It depends which one you want. It's subject to change. I put that on there. But I do think, because number twos are like the most extroverted, it's really, you might as well just go all the way there, because there is, like, a lot of crackhead energy, and it's definitely on the sleep blast side of the spectrum. Number threes are the most introverted. I've definitely, like, coached and talked to people who are number threes, and it's been a lot more introverted than I knew was possible. um, very much in a tunnel and working on their own thing. So it's it's not lacking consume and it's not lacking blast. There's always something going on there, and so it comes off as like a play last kind of situation. So that's kind of what I mean by like the movement, right? Like depending on how you show up socially, there's a certain movement to it. Um, a social movement also kind of like makes sense. The number fours are really chill, really laid back compared to every other type. They're very easy to get along with, the coolest people, but almost too cool, and it's kind of that blast last coolness. And so the play consumes sleep, they end up getting, moved from person to person, in terms of like they don't have a direction of their own, so they might sign on to someone else's direction, someone else's purpose, and just kind of be buddies. But yeah, just to get some examples in here, I could talk about it, but you know, let's see some examples. We all know about Andrew Tate being a number one in terms of, that's just your typical sleep blast play. But then the number one on top of that is like very much sleep blast play. So he's like completely congruent for better or for worse. In this case, it seems like for worse because it's definitely harder to consume yourself when you have consumed last twice, basically. And yeah, so it is this know-it-all effect, and it really does prove to be, and we'll revisit this, but basically that's the ideal animal stack for the number one because they don't really know that they don't know that they don't know everything. They, you know, and I shouldn't say they, I should say we. Like we have this know-it-all kind of vibe where we feel like we know enough to talk authoritatively on a topic socially. For example, even I actually went through this with the social types. I thought I knew everything about it as soon as it came out, and turns out I didn't. And so that's something that the number ones have to go through is constantly having egg on your face every time you like go out and like you're kind of driven to act like you know everything, but you don't. And the number ones always get caught eventually, and it's only a matter of time. And then it's like it can be a disaster, in that situation. Um, but yeah, the consume last is only part of it. It's also demon play, as in save your sleep, at least from a social perspective. So it can have that introverted spin to it. Um, that said, it still has blast play in the top three. So that level of extroversion is why the number ones generally get driven with or without their will. They get driven by their own machinery to go and do something, produce something, and be a person with a direction. Um, yeah. So the number twos, moving on to number twos, we got our buddy Tony Robbins here. And he is our buddy because he is play first, and he's just perfectly fitting into this animal stack that I think is the most ideal for number two. And that's because it is not only crackhead, but you got consume high up there, so you got some skib energy as well. Um, so the play and blast, it's basically like helping people with you know being responsible plus having friends. Both responsibility and friends will cause you to go help people who without even having anything in it. It doesn't necessarily serve their own identity. Now, when a social two person gets older, they eventually find their identity, but the issue is that they might see that the responsibility itself is their identity, but it's not. By their own choosing, they end up helping people, and they think that that's their identity, but it may not actually be their identity. So running around and doing things for people, you get a lot of good vibes out of it, but at the end of the day, you run yourself tired, and it's a very sleep last. You may stumble into a good life, but it's really tough and take uses a lot of energy to get there. Um, I don't want to say anything negative about it, but yeah, that's just the animal stack. The number threes are the play last. They are very withdrawn. They think they generally know enough in their domain. They're not trying to punch out above their weight class for the most part. But the sleep consume blast animal stack is the most like a number three because it has to consume from the number three specialized actually generally knows how to do things. Like it knows how the next levels, the deep levels of how to do anything in society, like some job, some art, craft thing, like a sushi chef or whatever else, right? There's so many things, even like a car mechanic or, someone said like doctor or lawyer, you get some very deep expertise in that and be a number three. Now, of course, anyone can do those jobs, but, you know, um, going to depth level with it, that is going to be, you know, very conducive to have sleep consume blast. But even the idea is that even if these are not your animals, you're still going to show up like this. Like that's the thing is like I still have, even though my own animal stack is play consume sleep, which is the ideal for the number four, I still have a certain spin to my existence that is very sleep blast play like. Um, because I keep thinking I know enough and I should be able to go and push for something, and then it turns out I don't know enough, or at least I don't look like I know enough, or I, you know, get caught somehow, and yeah, yeah, I might go and try to do things that I'm actually not qualified for. That is what the number one would do, right? And that's what the sleep last play would do. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm play consume sleep. Like, why am I doing this? Like, and so you end up catching yourself if you're incongruent, um, or you're sensitive to being to catching yourself, um, at least a little bit more often than your congruent counterparts. The number fours then are the play consume sleep. So we got our buddy Joe Brogan. Uh, he is play consume sleep, and the number four's ideal stack is play consume sleep. And it definitely checks out that the number fours they get dragged along by other people, so the play makes sense. The consume is good for the specialize, and the sleep is also good for the specialize. But yeah, the number fours, they're just picking up hobbies left and right, like things like, jujitsu, pool is what Joe Rogan is doing, archery, hunting, right? He picks up all these hobbies, and he's probably really, really good at it, but it's not like he's doing a million different things. He's not doing the social two thing. He's not picking up all these responsibilities, but he is picking up hobbies. He's getting really good at them, and it is that play consumes sleep. It's very introverted still, shockingly, but the play is what makes them very chill in the community and community oriented. They're not necessarily killing themselves for the community like the number twos, which you would think that the number fours should be more extroverted than number twos, but turns out it's not friends that makes you extroverted. It's actually the responsibility. It's doing the work for everyone. That's what turns you into a real true extrovert. The number four is they're not trying to do all the work in the world, so they are allowed to be this introverted, play, consume, sleep type. And the thing is, for the number ones and fours, it feels a lot more certain for me, or it feels a lot more significant to me that the number ones are sleep last play and the number fours are play, consume, sleep. But the number twos and threes, it's not as well understood, at least by me, that there's a very clear ideal animal stack. All right, so moving forward from here, all the animal stacks are listed here for what I think are ideal generally. They all have a certain commonality with them, which I'm going to go over in the next slide. But the The number ones are generally the consume last types. The number twos are generally the sleep last types, and the number threes play last. Number fours blast last. And the reason for this, I might as well go to the next slide, which is the number ones are consume last because they know it all, and that allows them to be driven. If they didn't know it all, they wouldn't drive. The number twos are sleep last because they got to help everyone. And if they had any sleep, they would do things other than helping everyone. And number threes are play last, and if they had to play with anyone, they couldn't move forward on their own initiatives. Number fours are blast last because if they had to ever blast to anyone, then they may not get along with them. They're just trying to vibe and pick up what they can. So that's the last animal for each social, and just some pictures of these people again. Yeah, so the first animals. So it's also kind of contentious at this time, in the community, and just talking out loud about what social type is correlated with which animal as their first animal. To get it out of the way, the number ones and fours is not as contentious. That number one is sleep and number four is play. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you could still argue for a few other possibilities, but the number two being consume is a little contentious, and number three being blast is also contentious. Like the number twos are very, very playful. So why is it consume first, kinda? And number threes are very sleepy. So why would it be like blast first? The thing is, the number threes really need to get their scam going, and the number twos really need to be on the cutting edge to get their work going. The thing is, the number twos are really trying to be on the cutting edge, and the number threes are really trying to get, their path moving so that they can be the person for people to go to, you know. And so that's my reasoning for those. But the number ones being sleep, if you needed anything for that, I mean, there are other ideas for what a number one's first animal could be, but sleep is generally it because it's very self-contained. Like the number ones are not trying to get any information from any other source. They're trying to go for what they're interested in. I shouldn't say they, I should say we, but generally, number ones, whatever falls into their box, they try to be the best at that thing. And they're not really trying to consume too much. They're not really trying to blast too much in terms of like finding their life path, finding the area that they're trying to dominate in. It's really this introverted world that they're coming from at first. And, it's not like some new consume is going to shake them. It's not like some blaster goal is going to move them. And it's not like they're trying to like play their way out of their own objectives. And the number fours, the first animal is basically play. For the reason is because they're generally playing with the tribe, right? So whatever the hell's going on, they'll drop it to go help their friends, to go hold down the fort, and do the things that need to be done. I mean, holding the fort isn't necessarily the play aspect. That is a different phenomenon, which is very correlated with the number fours. But the play aspect is more about how they are being pulled from multiple directions and just not their own. It's not their own drive. Being a leaf in the wind is basically what the play is about. Why that first animal is play. Moving on, we got. So this is the experimental section. So if the rest of the stuff are things you already knew about, this is more kind of experimental. Maybe you felt this way, maybe you didn't. Maybe this isn't new information, but I think for most people it might be. The number one. So this is just an idea I came up with in terms of like the functions. If you were to make them as functions, the social types, Um, the number one has a DI, basically flex, and the OE of responsibility, or you could also call it generalizing, by the way. So that's very consume like. And the number twos have, responsibility, friends is play. Number three has specialize and flex, which is sleep. Number four has, um, what do they have? They have the friends, which is the DE, and then they have the specialize, which is the OI, so that's blast. So I know that the number one, the word that I'm using here is kind of, negative, and the number four is more positive, but I think that's just part of the NF of the social types is that people generally don't feel bad for number ones and they do feel bad for number fours. And that's just part of the math of how we need to look at these things because even for people who don't know about social types, they still have this kind of bent view towards people who are coming off as this type of person. So someone who comes off as a number one comes off as very selfish. Someone who comes off as a number two comes off as very overextended. And the number threes show themselves as withdrawn and quiet. Don't bother them with your bullshit. Don't bother them with that. Number fours, they're going to support you. And they're going to support you almost to a fault. So if they're buddies with somebody and this is like, hey, make better friends, and they're not willing to drop their support for someone, it can be dangerous. But yeah, they're supporters. They're supportive people. Um, Now, they may not have the firing power of a number two, but yeah, they're supporters. Um, yeah, so these shadow animals, that's generally supposed to showcase like what the social types are kind of. There's a certain initial vibe from them that isn't represented in the entire animal stack itself. For example, like I feel like the number ones are sleep, blast, play, which is consume last. So why does it have some consume element to it? It feels like it's kind of like a shadow. Now I don't know if shadow is the best word to use. Use some other word, but there is something here that it feels like number ones are kind of consuming. They're consuming on some level, but it's not. It's not in the way of the animal stack. It's more in like some inherent consume function, almost like a glass lizard type situation going on here. Where the number two and three, it's not as glass lizard like, but number four also it seems to be like a glass lizard effect. I'm not gonna go too much into this. This is definitely experimental, but I do believe in whatever the hell is on this slide. I just don't know how to explain it super well. And yeah, you got this. Yep, well, number one's definitely dude doesn't have no consume. Some kind of consume. Two's definitely playful. Three's sleep. You don't have to go too far there. But then there is something blasty about Joe Rogan, where he's even though he's blasty, he has a radio show. Like he's blasting on some level. He's supporting all his friends. People support him, and yeah. So there's got to be another extra factor here. Maybe it's like an X factor type thing. But yeah, that's the shadow animals or whatever the hell you want to call them. Social type and the animalistic nicknames. So this is a good one because well, for those people who feel like, you can draw some conclusions from this or you can get some personal growth out of it. I certainly can, to see myself as like the blaster douchebag, but then also the crackhead energy exists somewhere out there. I'm not your typical blast last. I got a little bit of crackhead energy from the number one, understanding that it's my social type that's driving the crackheadedness. Seeing the number twos as more crackheaded, I'm like, holy shit, I'm a little bit like the number twos, right? Because I have the social one thing going. And yeah, the social twos have the crackhead skib thing going, and the skib is like the number fours, right? And the number fours are a little bit like the number threes because the number threes are mopes and they're specializing in things. And so there's a lot of like consume going on, at least with the number fours because they're skipping everywhere. But the threes, they're just taking whatever the hell they mope about and they turn it into their scam, which is why they go from mope to douchebag. Um, but also looking back at the ideal animal stacks, that's how you derive these. So the number one is a sleep blast play. The number two is a play blast consume. Number three is a sleep consume blast. Number four is the play consume sleep. And so, yeah, these are just the animalistic nicknames. I'm going to flash a more wordy slide just to show the full chain. But yeah, moving on. The extrovert versus introvert spectrum on the social types, it's quite clear that the number twos are the most extroverted and number threes are the least extroverted, as in most introverted. But it's also important to note that the number ones are actually more extroverted than the number fours. Number fours are straight chillin' and doing things. They're very competent doing things, but from a social typing perspective and the social spectrum, the number ones are more extroverted. And yeah, it's kind of hard to measure in certain ways because number fours have such play energy. But this is what we're seeing at this time. Yeah, but it's very clear that the number twos are more extroverted than number threes. But of course, because ones have the responsibility second, that's definitely doing a lot of work there. And fours having the specialized second, that's going to chill them out, at least from the work perspective, right? Yeah. And so we also have the pattern of ambivert versus omnivert. Now, I'm not going to go over this, like what they mean. Um, well, just to say that ambiverts are the ambiverted energy is the energy of the douchebags, the sleep blast and the play consumes, the douchebags and the skibs. And omniverts is, the opposite of, the super introverts and the super extroverts. We call them omniverts. Um, but yeah, the one and four are more ambiverted, so they don't mind going between the introvert and extrovert energy. But the twos and threes, they totally mind going between those two energies because they're either super extroverted like a number two or super introverted like a number three, so they're going all in. But they do obviously switch, and swing to the other side every now and again, especially for tidal waves. And then, of course, the number twos might think of themselves as super introverted at some point, and then number threes may see themselves as very extroverted and running all over the place, but they're not. They're staying in the same place, and but to me, the swing does happen, and that's something that needs to be validated, which is why I like the term omnivert, is because it's just an existence of like an extreme extrovert and extreme introvert time for both of these characters. Um, the number twos will have an extreme introvert time, and the number threes will have an extreme extrovert time. And that honestly has thrown me off in like typing people, talking to people, coaching people. The number threes definitely have a certain extroverted energy that they let out, but it is in this, swinging way. Just moving on quickly, the energy versus info, it just follows the animal stacks. And yeah, the twos and threes, because they're so serious about the work, it feels more info dom, at least to me. I'm not that serious about the work, so it feels very energy dom, but that's maybe just opinion at this time. I understand in some ways maybe the ones and fours can seem a little bit info dom like, especially when it comes to people stuff, right? Um, yeah. So, but that is pretty much what energy dom is. Is you're crazy about the people stuff. So bonus patterns for social needs at this time is the observers are the twos and threes, deciders are the ones and fours. Still seeing that happens. The whole point of going through this is also to just say that like, hey, I'm still seeing this. Just to put my stamp on it in terms of, hey, I am seeing this and this is what's working out in reality. The number ones are really seeming to be more double masculine and the fours are more double feminine. That much I can say. Like, drive is masculine and being a leaf in the wind is feminine. Who would have knew? Um, of course, the middles are more contentious. And yeah, like the number ones being ST and the number fours being NF. I mean, that makes intuitive sense. You either can feel that way or not. That's up to you. But yeah, I would see the twos as being more SF, results oriented, and the threes as being more like this long term, hey, like we'll work out some mastery, over the long term, and they have the big picture in mind in that sense. So number threes feel more NT, at least to me. So those are just some extra bones I'm throwing you guys, if it means anything to you. So the necessary disclaimers are everything here is like subject to change. There is some unknown weight to these patterns. Like based on what I'm saying, like it seems like a very binary statement, some of what I'm saying, but really like there might be some weight to it. So for example, I said ones and fours are decider like. It could be that it's like 2/3 decider and there is a 1/3 like true observer portion. For example, ones are seem to be kind of double activated in the OI with a double activated blast. That's pretty observery. So sometimes the ones can get obsessed about the life path, stuff like that. So there's a weight to these patterns, and it does vary, I think, between coins that you're relating then to social types. And this is, these findings are based on a limited sample size. Additional time and volume is needed to develop a stronger understanding. And yeah, I mean, like I've been finding out a lot about this through some of the coaching calls I've had with people. And yeah, the clients have been really good, and but it's been challenging to like help people through the social type stuff. There's been good results, but the thing is like the social type information is not very well known yet, but there are some very tangible next steps for people to make. There are some action steps every single person of every type can take. Um, the biggest tip I would give to people is to work on your third social need. So if you're a number three, you want to work on the friends. If you're a number one, you want to work on the specialize. If you're a number two, you want to work on the flex. If you're a number four, you want to work on responsibility. So that is what I'm seeing, at least in the coaching. Um, and just to shout out my own link, I'm going to put one in the description. If you want to use your type to actually make a real improvement in your life, talk to me. And yeah, I got like coaching packages, and the prices are going to go up next year, and they're going to keep going up. But for now, it's been a good way to really get to know people, talk to people about op stuff, and yeah, here's my thank you slide. Thank you for watching, and yeah, like and subscribe to the video, and yeah, hope to see you around, and leave a comment. See how was this any new information to you? How are you understanding it? Are you actually able to use any of the social type information to move forward in your life? Um, yeah, I'd love to know. Yeah, take care. See ya.